Have you ever looked out your backyard, maybe at your feeders or going through a walk through nature and noticed it's not exactly a peaceful scene out there? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods talking about nature right outside your front door. There's always one bird that acts like it owns the whole place. And to be honest, it probably does. We are going to talk about something that I find fascinating when I'm out birding. Why do birds fight? I was camping, about a month ago, and I noticed that there were a bunch of birds fighting right inside my campground. They would tumble into the woods, they would chase each other down. And it's not just about the flashy, dramatic stuff. I guess there's plenty of that. But it's this full idea. I was wondering when I was camping and I had no internet, why is this even happening? What do they have to fight about? And the remarkable ways that birds have figured out how to avoid fighting too. And what surprised me is, as I was paying closer to attention, bird aggression doesn't feel random. They're not just attacking any bird that comes nearby. It feels more strategic. There's rules that they follow. And once you know what to look for, you'll be able to see it yourself too. Before we get started, let's get into the specific reasons why birds fight so that we can understand the logic behind it. Fighting is expensive to a bird. It costs energy. And energy is valuable. It's how much they eat. It's them going out and finding slugs and seeds and what it is they need in order to eat anything. They expend a lot of energy. And if they're fighting, it costs a lot more energy. And it carries a risk of injury. And an injured bird doesn't do as well surviving. They can't go to the little bird hospital and get checked out. So from a regular natural standpoint, birds that fight unnecessarily are at a disadvantage. So that means conflict. When it happens, it's almost always something worth fighting for. And in the bird world, there are three things that are almost always worth fighting for: territory, mates, and food. Everything else is dive bombing. I give a fourth one, I guess, too. I just thought of it, is protecting the babies. So those are the four things. But everything else, the dive bombing, the feather puffing, the chasing around, it flows around those four things. So let's take a look at them. First of all, territory is the single biggest driver of bird conflict out there, especially in spring. When a male bird establishes a breeding territory, he's not just claiming a patch of ground or a specific nest area. He is claiming the nesting site, the food resources inside of it, the shelter, the access to the mate within that space. His entire reproductive future depends on that area. So he defends it hard. Most familiar form of territorial defense is a song. When a male robin sings at the top of your roof, he is claiming at 5 a.m, singing his heart out, he is broadcasting a warning to every other male robin out there, this place is taken. And the song is, in a real sense, a substitute for physical combat. It's a way of saying, I'm here, I'm strong, look at how strong my voice is, don't test me. And it is to warn those other birds away. There are other ones. You'll see red-winged blackbirds. When you walk by their area, they will start to cheep in a particular way, threatening in a particular kind of way. They may even try to swoop around your head to defend just this area. So there's different ways of going about it, but the song is certainly one of those. The red-winged blackbird's call is so loud and so noisy that they act as an alarm system for other birds who try to live a more quiet life as well. But when a song doesn't work, things get escalated. Robins in particular have a reputation for a brutal defense system. Two males can go out it in combat, sustained combat, rolling around on the ground, pecking and scratching. Territorial fights between robins can occasionally result in injury too. For a bird that seems so cheerful and hopping around on your lawn, they're surprisingly ferocious when it comes to their own borders. And I have seen that in my backyard. And like I said, I saw it at my campsite as well. It's not just robins, but bluebirds, wrens, song sparrows, red-winged blackbirds. I mentioned those before. Most songbirds with defined breeding territories will fight to defend them as well. I've seen swallows and wrens fight over the same house. or bluebirds too. Bluebirds and swallows tend to like the same kinds of houses, and they'll fight over them. And then you'll see a couple standing on the birdhouse defending it. One thing worth noting is that territory sizes vary among species and habitats. Some birds hold a large, exclusive territory area, and others only defend the immediate space around their nest. Some species are colonial nesters and don't really hold any territory at all. They'll squabble over the best nesting spots within kind of this colony area instead. But with me going out and camping, like I said, I saw several different kinds of birds that were having different territorial fights. You will see them, and based on the size of the bird, like I said, a robin will stand off. The wren will defend its nest box. The red-winged blackbird will dive bomb you whenever it feels like you are coming too close. These all really happen, and you'll be able to see them, but just keep in mind that the territorial spaces are a little bit different. The second big reason that birds fight is reproduction, specifically competition for mates. In most songbird species, the male competes for the female. The logic is pretty familiar. The female invests in the reproduction, the eggs, the incubation, and often more time than not, rearing the chicks when they are born. So they have the right to be choosy. Males compete for access to those choosy females. They're going to be the younger ones, the healthier ones, and those males that win are the ones that can be more physical, can defend their nests, bring back food. The competition gets physical when the territory and the mate overlap. And they usually do, because the male with a good territory is more likely to attract a great mate. And so it can also go in the other direction too. Some species females compete for males and the access to quality nesting resources. House wrens are a good example of that. Females will destroy eggs of a competing female nest to eliminate a rival. The idea of these species where one female mates with several males, the females can be aggressive competitors. Spotted sandpipers work this way. The female holds the territory, defends it against other females, while the males do much of the incubating. So it can be either way, but usually it's one way or the other. So the takeaway is that the mate competition drives a lot of the bird aggression and the direction of the competition depending on the mating system of the species. This also folds in with my fourth one, which was the eggs. Who's going to protect the eggs? And you can see this on live cams if you're watching eagle cams, but you can see it out there in real life nature. A few weeks ago, when I was out with my friend bird watching, we saw a really interesting thing where an eagle flew in to an area where there were a bunch of shorebirds and red-winged blackbirds. Suddenly, this eagle, which appeared to be standing on something, and we didn't know what it was standing on, was getting mobbed. All these red-winged blackbirds were attacking it, and black-net stilts. They are shorebirds. They don't look like they could attack anything. And suddenly, it is attacking an eagle. And they're just swarming this eagle, and the eagle didn't really care. But what the eagle had, was a fish in its claws, and that fish was heavy, and it just needed a place to rest for a little bit while it gathered enough oomph so that it could fly that fish off into its own nest. But boy, every bird in that area freaked out, started fighting. So it, like I said, the second one defending your mate and then defending your nest with eggs, that's what was happening with that eagle. So it's a big part of aggression. And then the last area is the driver is food. We witness this because it plays out in backyard feeders a few times. And that's usually, like I said, the ones most people see. A dominant chickadee displaces everyone else at the sunflower seeds. It's a resource in competition and action. The bird establishes sort of a hierarchy, a dominance hierarchy, a pecking order, so to speak, And this is where that phrase comes from. When you're observing birds, there's higher ranked birds and lower ranked birds, and the lower ranked birds will yield to the higher ranked ones. The interesting thing about feeder hierarchy is it's often pretty stable. So the birds know the order. The subordinate birds don't usually come in for a fight. It just waits its time, moves to a different perch, and then comes back when the dominant bird leaves. And the system works because everyone learns their place in it. Physical fights at the feeder tend to happen when a hierarchy gets unsettled. A new bird arrives. A breeding season shifts dominance in the relationships, or resources start to get scarce and the subordinate bird decides it's not worth the risk. Beyond, feeders, food competition happening at fruiting trees as well. Or in some cases, if you think of carcasses with crows, ravens, turkey vultures, they're also good fishing spots along the different migratory stages where energy resources are critical and the competition is intense. We saw when we were out, there's a dam that's not too far from here. And it was interesting because there were rocks along the side of this river and birds were competing with standing on the rock to catch a fish. It was a great place to catch a fish right there standing on the rock. And so a bird would grab a fish out of the water, fly off with it, and another bird would land there and do the same kind of thing. But sometimes there would be chases between them to try to defend that rock, which is an awesome bird fishing site. So then the category, and this is the other category that sort of deserves its own moment, I guess, is nest defense. Like I said, parent birds, especially females on the nest, can be surprisingly fierce. And the goal isn't to expand territory or acquire a mate. It's to protect those eggs that have already been made. And this is where we get the bomb diving behavior of the red-winged blackbirds. So there's a bite path I take all the time. And it's interesting, like I said, when I go by it, you will see the red-winged blackbirds cheep at me. Cheep, cheep. And then during a certain week, coming up probably like this week, next week, they will start to dive at you and try to chase you away. They're not big enough, to chase me away. And oftentimes I have my bike helmet on when I'm in that area. They're pecking at my bike helmet. It's kind of funny to watch. But they're chasing you. A small, furious bird starts hitting you in the back of the head. And that's it. That's a defending red-winged blackbird. They will target humans, hawks, eagles, like I said, crows, dogs, anything that looks like a threat. And it doesn't care what size it is. It's pure protective instinct, and it's pretty effective. Most things try to get out of its way. And so the next part of it is that there's a defense that comes in interesting. We're going to talk about this next week. There are something that's called brood parasite birds, where what they will do is they will lay their eggs in the nest of some other birds. North America, you think about the brown-headed cowbird is the main example. The female cowbird will sneak into a warbler or a vireo's nest, lay a single egg, and leave. The host parent then raises the cowbird chick. Unfortunately, what happens, and we'll talk about this next week, it grows faster and larger than its own chicks, and that means it needs more food and resources. So it's an interesting situation. But you will see robins recognize cowbird eggs, different size and a different shape, and they'll eject the egg from the nest. Some warblers have learned to identify cowbird eggs, and they will abandon the nest and just go build another one before they've laid eggs themselves. So it's an arms race out there. They will defend themselves. And one thing that I thought was kind of interesting too is that I heard that red-winged blackbirds, because they are so loud and noisy, when a parasitic bird comes into their neighborhood, they will start screaming at that bird, and all the other birds know what it is. So birds will hang out and build nests not too far from the red-winged blackbird nest because they know it's a natural alarm system. So that's it. But what happens? How do birds fight exactly? And there's a whole different kind of way that birds will fight in sort of an order. First, it starts off with a display. Before any attack actually happens, you'll see feathers puff up. You'll see wings spread out. If they have a crest on the top of their head, that will pop up. Their bodies angle. I always say that they look like arrows. They get in this arrow thing, and it's a threat display. And so they sense that they're going to test to see if that other bird will back down. When one bird does back down, it tends to crouch, tuck its feathers away, look away, and give a more submissive posture. Okay, you win, I'm not a threat, and the dispute ends, and that's the end of it. A genuinely smart behavior because that bird is not escalating things to physical combat. which would make it more likely that it could get injured. The bird that survives is the bird that can read a situation accurately and only fight when they're either likely to win or it really matters. Like I said, song as a form of combat. We talked about the territorial song, but it's worth noting too that songs are sophisticated enough that birds can assess whether the rivals are just listening. Studies of birds shown that they respond more aggressively to songs from unfamiliar males, potentially newcomers, than the songs of established neighbors. And so if the established neighbors come with a truce, then they already know that song. So there's a phenomenon called the deer enemy effect, and that a bird is less aggressive to a known neighbor than a complete stranger because they know that that neighbor understands the boundaries that are already established and it's stable. The stranger is the real threat. Hummingbirds, which is a very small bird with a huge attitude, if you want a master class in avian aggression, you watch your hummingbird feeders. Hummingbirds are some of the most aggressive birds relative to the size of any species in North America. A single dominant male will often attempt to control an entire feeder, an entire patch of flowers, chasing away every other hummingbird that even approaches. And they're so fast, they can pull it off. A ruby-throated hummingbird can reach speeds of 30 miles per hour in a chase. And they're able to do like aerial combat moves in an extraordinary way. They dive bomb rivals. They engage spiraling chase fights. They will occasionally make contact. For the bird that weighs almost as much as a penny, they are ferocious. And when it goes physical, the displays fails and the fights start to occur. The bird that looks a lot like pecking, wing striking, grappling, that's when the fight actually happens. You'll see that raptors like eagles and hawks will use their talons, and those fights can look genuinely dangerous. You'll see that oftentimes when an eagle has a fish and another bird, another eagle or another hawk comes in and tries to grab the fish. They start locking talons. They start falling towards the ground. Swans can use their wings to strike hard. It's strong enough to actually injure a human if they would get too close. I saw once a goose tackle a golfer once that got too close to its nest. But for songbirds, like I said, a physical fight, they're very brief. The goal usually isn't to injure, it's to establish dominance. And once that's clear, the loser usually retreats, and then the winner goes back to whatever it was defending. So the next time you're watching your feeders or walking past a marsh or hearing a bird belt out its song at sunrise, you're watching this play out in real time. The cardinal displacing the junco at the feeder isn't being a bully. It's running a survival calculation that has allowed it to survive for a long time. The red-winged blackbird diving at your head isn't being irrational. It's being a very effective parent. And the robin that is singing at the top of your oak tree at dawn isn't celebrating the morning, although I like it. It's probably doing a little of that, but it's also saying, hey, this is my area. You keep out. If a bird is telling the word, this is mine, and I'll prove it to you if I have to do it, that's what you'll see oftentimes. All right, everyone, thanks so much. I appreciate you spending a little time in the natural world with me today. I'm Jill from the North Woods, and this is Buzz, Blossom, and Squeak. And if you have anything to say to me, you can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. All my podcasts are at jillfromthenorthwoods.com. Appreciate you being out there.